Before we begin our study of trigonometry, we need to review some concepts and definitions from geometry. Most of these concepts and definitions hopefully will be pretty straightforward, so that once you see them you'll quickly remember them. And then once we have these definitions and concepts from geometry, we'll then start to build upon these concepts as we develop trigonometry. Alright, so let's start with this. That's a C there. Okay, here we have an angle. Okay. And so the definition of an angle is two rays that share a common endpoint. So hopefully you remember from geometry that a ray, so you had things like points, lines, planes, and then from a line we were able to define both a segment. So a line is a series of points that goes on forever in both directions. A segment is when you put two endpoints and kind of chop the ends off. An array is you start at one endpoint and you keep on going on and on and on and on forever. And so an angle is when you have two rays that go on and go on forever and their endpoints meet together. Okay. Now the common endpoint is called the vertex. So this is the vertex, which we name a number of things vertexes, such as a parabola and an absolute value function. So common endpoint is called the vertex. Okay. And then the two rays we actually call sides. So those are the sides of the angle. Of the angle. Good. Alright, so next we want to be able to identify or name an angle. Alright, so when we identify or name an angle, for this particular angle, there are three ways we can do that. So one way would be to say angle BAC. So notice we go BAC. We could also use angle CAB. And then in this particular case, we could also use angle A. Okay. Now there are some things that are specific when identifying the angle. So let's look at the three-letter designations. And when we use a three-letter identification, notice that the vertex is always the middle letter. Okay, so that's important. So with a three-letter identification, the middle letter must be the vertex. Okay, so that's, and so no matter what, when you're identifying an angle, make sure that vertex is in the middle. Now, for the one-letter identification, you can only use the one-letter identification if only one angle has that vertex. So, one letter identification only if one angle has that vertex. Alright, so let's go ahead and look at another example here about what we mean by this last statement. Okay, so let's say we have this figure right here. So let's name 3 different angles in the diagram. Or, for example, name the 3 angles in the diagram. Okay, so we have this angle here, M and O. We also have this angle O and P. And then the last angle is the big angle, MNP, which covers the whole thing. Okay, so in this particular case, this figure here has 3 different angles. We have 2 inside angles and then 1 big angle. Okay. So if we were to say identify angle N, and I say, well, which angle is angle N? Well, we would have a big old question mark here, because in this particular case there are 3 angles that all have a vertex of angle N. So because of that, we have to use a 3-letter identification. So must use 3 letters. Now, for trigonometry, we are going to get to use the 1-letter identification a good amount, because in trigonometry we use triangles, and in triangles it's very clear when we say angle A what angle that is. But there will be cases where we have a number of triangles within a figure, and so you might have to use that 3-letter designation. Okay, so now let's classify angles. So there's 4 types. So let's first start with an acute angle. An acute angle is an angle whose measure is less than 90 degrees. Okay, so for example, over here we could have this, let's say this were angle A, and from here to here was 30 degrees. And so we could say the measure of angle A equals 30 degrees. And notice how we write that out. We have the measure of angle A equals 30 degrees. And that's what that little M stands for. Okay, the next one is an obtuse. Okay, an obtuse angle is an angle whose measure is greater than 90 degrees. so let's look at an example of this would be, let's say this is angle B, this is 120 degrees, and in this particular case, I don't know, the measure of angle B equals 120 degrees. All right, the third one, and the most important one, is a right angle. And this is an angle whose measure is 90 degrees. Okay, so now this one is very important. So let's say we have angle C, and let's say this is 90 degrees right here. Well, 90 degrees is such an important angle that we actually give it a special symbol. We put in a little box in there, and this means 90 degrees. And so we have to remember what that box means. All right, and the last one is a straight angle. And this is an angle whose measure is 180 degrees. Okay, so let's say we have a line here. Okay, so in this case, the measure of angle D equals 180 degrees. And we're basically going from here to here. So when you have a straight angle, in essence, you just have a line. But we'll be using this concept of the straight angle to help us solve different types of problems.